we don't really have a game plan, but I thought solar is really awesome to hear about more, because I have
Mhm.
solar on my house, and I mean, I'm very glad. I always feel like I made the right decision because when I was looking at getting solar, um, in summer times like right now, I'd be spending like probably 400, 450 on my electric bill, which is not even that much for some people.
No.
I've heard more than double that on
Yeah.
certain instances. But I have a Tesla battery backup, and in my area, our power goes down quite a bit lately in the last few years, and so it's really awesome to like, oh, your power's out, no big deal, we still got electricity.
Yeah.
Um, although when I am running the AC, it does suck that battery pretty quick, so it did go
Yeah.
out like a month ago. It went out at nighttime, and it actually went out. The battery was drained, and it was like 100 degrees or whatever. It was super hot. I woke up just sweating. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as money savings, like, it's like I pay like $200 a month, and
Yeah.
sometimes I get $20 credits from Edison. I'm on Edison. And sometimes, sometimes I have to pay a bit. Like right now, my last bill is like $40. So
Mhm.
way better, on the average, and especially just it's not really saving me money. It's just super nice to have that battery backup.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's my experience. Now, I bought the solar. I didn't lease it. So those are questions that, I would love to hear, your take on things, what you think is better for most people. I still had no money out of pocket, and I did a loan. Um, and so it's just in as the owner of the system, I feel like it can give me more value to my property because I own it. It's not a lease. It's not going to disappear one day or what have you. So I kind of do like that, but tell me what your take is.
So I mean, the best way to do it always is cash, right? That's
Of course, yeah.
buying it cash is the best way because then you own it, and at some point, that energy that it's creating is going to be essentially free. But buying versus leasing versus what's called a power purchase agreement, PPA. So again, I'm a big fan of buying because even if you have to finance it, the only problem with financing is you got to pay the points and the fees and all that kind of stuff. But it's still usually better because again, you will own it, and at some point that energy will be free. I'm not against leasing really if it's the right situation. Like I would suggest a lease for somebody that cannot use the 30% tax credit, right? Maybe somebody's retired, maybe somebody is, doesn't have a big tax appetite or something like that.
So
then I might suggest a lease.
I want to pause you for a
Sure.
couple questions because you mentioned a few things that I'm not even clear on. So first off, the PPA, the power purchase agreement, I want more detail on that if you don't mind.
Sure.
And then we'll go into how that tax credit works because
So when I was in Santa Cruz, I had a power purchase agreement through a Solar City before Tesla showed up.
Power purchase agreements, again, you'll hear PPAs were very popular back in the early 2000s because these were the guys that were knocking on your door. They would come in, they would show you, oh, you got a $400 bill. I can show you how you have a $200 bill. And people would say, okay, no money out of pocket. You don't have to worry about the system. We maintain it. Blah, 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 blah. Well, what ends up happening with the power purchase agreement is typically there are what's called accelerators. And so every year that it goes up by usually about 3% your payment.
Exactly. Yeah.
They say they're doing it to cover inflation, which is probably true too. But at the end, you probably end up paying more than you were. In a power purchase agreement, what that essentially means is you're buying the power that system creates from that company that installed it, right? Okay. So the idea is Edison is going to charge you 25 cents. We're only going to charge you 18 cents, right? But where we run into issues with power purchase agreements, number one, and the biggest one is typically they were not building systems big enough for the energy usage at the homes because they wanted to show you a lower bill, right? Well, our system's only going to be $200 a month. Well, it's only $200 a month because they only put in, 18 panels when the house probably needed, 25. And so then you end up having to pay the power purchase agreement, but you still got to pay Edison for what is not being covered by the system. So now year 10, year 11, all those accelerators, and you're still paying Edison. That's where you get into trouble. And typically back then also, and not to get too much in the weeds, but also they would, it's hard to add to your system, right? It's hard to say, I need to add 2 panels. I need to add 4 panels. Technically it's not hard, but it's hard for us to find contractors willing to take a whole day, send a whole team out for only 4 panels. They just don't want that job.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not.
So that's basically how. So power purchase agreements, I'm not a big fan, to be honest with you, because again, nowadays with every lender, you can get no money down. Because that was the other big advantage of power purchase agreements. Oh, nothing out of pocket, or free solar, that kind of stuff.
So back when they were doing a lot of those, the competition of buying it and getting a loan, you still had to come up with money out of pocket. So exactly. They were selling that, which I did notice because I talked to quite a few different people when I was getting my solar, and they did propose that power purchase agreement. They didn't really go into a lot of detail on what it was, and I had to kind of dig and get information. They didn't tell me about the payments increasing over the years until I looked at the contract. And then I kind of started doing the math, which they don't really do for you. And I'm like, man, this thing's going to be costing me like $500-600 a month eventually. Hell no.
Yeah,
it's not the right
that is exactly true. And they usually don't use very good equipment because they don't care, so they're using basement stuff. So and the whole maintain thing. This is the other thing that I want to get into, because this is where leases say that also. Oh, if you don't own it, we'll maintain it. Anything that goes wrong. Well, the panels that we sell and the inverters that we sell have a 25-year manufacturer warranty on it. So them taking care. But here's the thing. There's no spinning. There's no parts moving. That the things just sit there and collect energy. That's all they do. So they very rarely break down. But then also maintenance on them, wash them off twice a year. That's all you got to do. That's all that's it.
I got to go on my roof and wash mine off because I haven't done that for a while. So I do see it as getting dirty.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too, but especially because we're out in Santa Clarita and we've had some recent fires in the area. As I drive around, I see these panels that are just covered in ash and dust. And I will tell you, cleaning them off makes a huge difference. So
that's
definitely makes a big difference because it's more sun hits it.
Do I use a hose or do I use like a pressure washer kind of thing?
Yeah, you can use a hose. You can. I mean, if you want to get crazy, you can do a pressure washer. If you have a couple bird poops and stuff like that, maybe. But for the most part, the main thing though is don't do it when it's hot. Right. You have to do it so you're there early in the morning or later in the evening, because they're glass, and hot glass, cold water, that doesn't mix very well.
So those pressure washers though, are those too much power, or you just have to kind of put it on a weaker?
Yeah, I'd put it on a weaker setting. Yeah. But like I said, I used to just go up there with a hose and spring. I would do it 4 times a year because again, out here was a little bit more, a little dustier. I do have a system now because I'm in the business and I was one of their first customers. So I have a system where I have sprinklers on each panel, and they go off twice a week.
No way. That's rad. I didn't even know that existed. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So I didn't ask you to kind of introduce yourself. So people, we just kind of got right into it. So tell me, how long have you been with solar? I know you're with Solarverse. Is that your company? Tell me a little bit about your background and stuff.
Yeah. So I work at Solarverse. My partner, Tim, and I, Tim basically owns it, but I'm the head of sales. And, so our idea is to definitely grow it. And to be very candid, we're a broker. So we are using we have our own contractor's license, but we have, we also use solar contractors because we like to do things geographically. So I'm not going to have a team in Lancaster install something in San Diego, right? So I do have teams up and down the state just to make sure that because they'll install it, but then if something goes wrong, they're not going to go back and fix it. So we like to kind of keep it local. Tim has been in Tim Pluma. A lot of people know him as Solar Tim on Facebook. He's been in the business since 2012. I've been in the business for 2 years, but I've had my panels for 10 years. So I'm very familiar. And Tim and I have been friends for a long time. So I've known, I know solar pretty well. I was one of the first people in my neighborhood to have I had a Nissan Leaf, and then I had a Chevy Volt. I don't have an electric car now because my kids drove my other cars so much I had to buy them because we were on leases. That was the conversation of this week in BNI. We work up and down California. At some point, we do want to expand out to Nevada, Arizona, Colorado is a good market right now too. So, but it's pretty simple. I mean, when people call us, we gather their electrical information. We build systems to basically offset. We call it offset 100%, but then we like to probably go to 125, 130 to future proof, right? Because maybe you're going to get another EV, more people living in the house, So these are all questions that we ask, so we can make sure that we, size that. So because, like I said before, it's hard to add a couple panels, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically how we do it. It's I'm not.
You can add a couple panels, but it's hard. Like if I said, "Hey, I'm kind of underpowered. Can we throw up?" Or I'm getting a Tesla or something. I need a little bit more power. It's like
the time when you literally can't do it is like my system is on what's called a string inverter, right? So the inverter is the system. So the panels create DC energy. They have to convert it to AC. So that's what an inverter does, basically. So I'm on what's called a string inverter, meaning that all of my panels go into one inverter. So I can't add to my system because that inverter is sized for the amount of panels that I have. Nowadays, what we're using is called microinverters. So each panel has its own inverter. So those are easier to add to because they just plug into another one. But again, it's hard to get people to go out there and do it.
How long have you been using the microinverters for?
Probably
years.
Probably. I think they became really popular in like 2017-ish.
Oh, okay.
So most solar companies are using them, but where I see string inverters coming back because they are less expensive is, remember, any new construction has to have solar. That's the law in California. So if you build an ADU, all these new homes that are being built out here in Santa Clarita area, they all have to have solar. So what they're doing is they're putting the minimum amount on they can. I've seen, houses, 3,600 square foot house with 8 panels on there, which is nowhere near. And then they're using a string inverter because it's cheaper, because they're builders. They don't care. And now I can't add to that system. Right. So, I mean, those are the calls we get more than anything is I have solar, I'm still getting a bill.
So what do you do in that situation? Do you just have to go and redo the whole thing or what?
I mean, yeah, it really is a tough situation, to be honest with you, because that's the other thing is, and we get this call a lot too, is typically string inverters last for about 10 years. And so, but solar panels last a lot longer than that. So we get calls like that. Hey, I have solar, and all of a sudden I just got a $600 bill. Well, your inverter died. And so now we have to decide, okay, do we just place the inverter on a system that's too small anyway, or do we redo the whole thing? So and unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for it, and it's really up to the customer, but it's just they were unfortunately put in a bad situation by a solar company that wasn't honest, shall we say?
Which I'm sure was going on a lot in the beginning because
Well, I still even see it now. I mean, that's the other thing is that I get so frustrated when I see and I hear some of these stories about people, selling solar to a 85-year-old woman, and it's like, really, dude? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Or, just not or building systems way too, like I had people that have come to me with, with their power purchase agreement that shows at the end of they're going to end up spending, $95,000 for a system. And I'm like, God, but they, they convince them because they're always able to make the good argument of, you have an $800 bill, I can show you a $400 bill. And that's not untrue. It's just and then people are like, okay, because they don't want that big bill. And then they don't, luckily you read the contract, you delved into it. People don't. I mean, you would be surprised how many people have no idea how many panels they have on their house, don't even know what they are. They're like, they're black and shiny, I guess.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah, when I did it, I don't know that we had the tax incentives that are around today. And the way it was explained to me and the way the contract read, Edison had a 4-tier pricing structure. And, like tier 1 and 2 were affordable. And then when you got into tier 3 and 4, especially during the summer months, you really got hit hard. And so what Solar City and their pitch was, we're going to put a system up there to keep you out of tiers 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And then the deal was, I just had to pay for whatever power got generated, and it was at a fixed price that was more expensive than tier 2, but less expensive than tier 3.
Mm-hmm. So
for me, that was an easy, path to, implement solar, because, I was skeptical. I didn't really know people who have panels. And, at the time I had done some research on how do you generate enough to go off grid. And the answer was, unless you had a fairly decent piece of real estate, size wise, you really couldn't. And the systems that were being put in place there, the Tesla Powerwall didn't exist. Tesla wasn't even in the solar business. So basically the systems that you had to build were, you needed a lot of panels and you needed a windmill. and then you had to have a battery farm. And so the only people who were doing these things were, kind of lived, outside of an urban setting. They were in a more rural setting, and they had enough real estate, and they didn't have a homeowners association that was going to freak out that, you've got, a solar farm and windmills on your property.
Well, and here's the other thing. Edison won't, unless you have to be living in a rural area to even be allowed to go off grid. Like, I couldn't go off grid. Edison won't allow it.
Yeah.
They make sure that you're always connected. So
they have their
nowadays you could build, because again, my panels are 265 watt panels. Now we're selling 400 watt panels. Oh, wow. So, the technology in that's gotten a little bit better. So technically you could buy enough panels and have enough battery storage to not be off grid, but not pull from the grid. Right. So you technically would be off grid. But
what's happening, like, if you generate more power than you use, what's happening to that power now?
It's still being sold back to Edison, but now under their new net metering, it's significantly less than what they were before. It used to be a 1-to-1. You'd buy it for $1, you'd sell it for $1. Now, basically, you're buying it for $1 and you're selling it for 25 cents.
There's still months I get like I said, a $5 credit, a $20 credit. Because
you're probably on net metering. When did you get it? When did you get solar?
That was about 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, you're on net metering too. And so the good news about that is you're grandfathered in, right? So you're still getting the 1-to-1, and so. But then here's where we have these situations. You're in tier 2, but you go out and get 2 Teslas. Now now you're not. So okay, I want to add a couple panels. If you add 2 panels to your system, that bumps you into NEM 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then I'll get less. Basically, they'll pay me less for the energy I'm giving them.
It is 100% better to stay in tier 2 or NEM 2, even if you're still paying a bill, because NEM 3 is not good at all.
Yeah.
It's I mean, and it's something that, I mean, I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but Edison and PG&E in San Diego, they're terrible. They're I don't understand how they are a for-profit company providing an essential service and they're all monopolies. I don't know how this was allowed to happen in California, one of the greenest states around. So it's very frustrating.
It's a facade. They say they're green, but we know
they're not.
Yeah,
they're not. Well, what they've done is they created the CPUC, right, which is California Energy. Yeah. And so that allows them to say, oh, it's not our decision. We're not doing this. It's the CPUC that made that decision, not us. And so they now have plausible deniability, and because the utilities are in their pockets like nobody else. I mean, it is ridiculous. Anyway, back to
let's go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's not a good rabbit hole for me. Trust me. You think I'm bad? Yeah, down that rabbit. It's terrible. But anyway, but
all even cars by 2030, right?
Yeah. But the one thing I will say, even in net metering 3, solar still makes sense. Okay, you will still save money over time. It's just what it really did is it pushed your break-even point from about 5 to 7 years out to about 8 to 10 years. Okay. Right, so that's really all it's done. But in the long term, it will always be better to have solar than not. Mm-hmm. It's just that when people have in their head, oh, I'm going to get solar, I'm going to save $200, $300, $400 a month, and then I sit down with them and I show them how they're going to save $80 a month. Like, $80 a month.
You actually give them the truth instead of
and it's like, well, I'm going to do all this stuff for $80. Forget that. But again, what I always tell people, $80 a month. If at the end of the year somebody came up and handed you $1,000, would you take it?
Exactly.
You would. So that it's like, it still makes sense. It's just it's changing the mindset. But solar will still always make sense. It's just there's still a lot of unscrupulous companies out there. So you just got to really be careful. You just got to be careful.
Are you guys doing a lot of battery installs?
I'm doing almost all my installs have batteries now, because now the idea, and back to your question, Chris, in net metering 3, what you do is instead of selling that cheap energy back to Edison, you store it into a battery, right? Mm-hmm. So you put all that energy in a battery during the day when nobody's really home and nobody's using. And then at night from 4 to 9, when prices are higher, you pull from the battery instead of pulling from the grid. Right. So right now, you really don't want to be, we're really trying to build systems that are exactly what you're using or exactly what you're going to use, because you don't want to sell energy back to Edison right now. Okay. The problem with that is, because it sounds great. Oh, that's wonderful. Batteries are expensive. I mean, they're, $9,000. And so when you add that into the break even, that's where it got pushed out so much. Right. Because.
Yeah, no, and I assume the battery technology's gotten better, but with California now, with they don't, Edison and the power companies, they can't supply enough power to the state, especially during summer months and what is it, 2025 or 2035? I forget which one. Everyone has to have a battery car. And,
2035, they're not going to be selling any gas
internal combustion. So you're going to have more Teslas and other electrics charging.
Well, and last year they basically were shutting the grid down, and then they came out with, hey, we have to have all electric cars by this time. How's that going to work, man?
It's not. I mean, I'll tell you right. The only way, and I've read plenty of studies on this from nonpartisan think tanks and all that kind of stuff. The only way California gets to its goals of what it has said is with solar, hydrogen, and wind. And those you have to have a combination of all of those. Now, hydrogen doesn't really have an infrastructure right now. Wind, sometimes it's wind. That's where solar comes in. Solar is really the number one way to get there. Like I said, the problem is the batteries. Now,
and that's in California because it does rain, and you don't get solar when it's all cloudy out.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Now, the other bit of good news.
The problem with hydrogen is it consumes electricity in order to make the hydrogen.
Yeah.
And you don't, so you actually have a net loss of energy.
Yes. Technically, yes.
Right?
But it
Elon
relieves
Musk referred to it as a brain dead technology.
Now, here's a little bit of good news. By I think next year, there are 5 cars that are have batteries that are called bidirectional charging. Okay, so right now, if you've heard, I'm sure you've seen the commercials for the Ford F-150 Lightning, where you can plug into it, so the Ford 150 Lightning has it. I think Audi's coming out with one, Kia, Toyota, and I always forget the last one. I can't remember what it is. But anyway, what this is, essentially, this battery can not only take a charge, it can give a charge. So the idea is, instead of spending $10,000 on a battery, put that $10,000 into a $32,000 car with a bidirectional charging. Then you come home, you plug your house into your car during that 4 to 9 period, and then you charge the car up after midnight when rates drop down quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So that way, and because when we're selling batteries, we usually sell them 5 kilowatt hours. One battery is 5 kilowatt hours. So you can have more. You can have 3. You can have 15 kilowatt hours. Batteries in a Tesla, they're 60 kilowatt hours. They're huge, right? Mm-hmm. So, and an average home uses about 25 kilowatt hours a day. So now it's probably 30 kilowatt hours a day. But where you only really want to cover that 4 to 9 period when energy is really expensive, right? So that's why the idea is, instead of, you'll be able to literally come home, plug your house into your car. It's called a transfer switch. You switch it over, and now you're running off your car. So
that's cool. That's interesting. I didn't even know.
And back to the batteries only, and this is maybe where you heard 2025, by 2025, every electric car has to be bidirectional charging.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what batteries are you guys using? Are you guys using Tesla batteries, or are there other brands that you favor? I mean,
Tesla, I'll tell you, Tesla's done a wonderful job. They're marketing their batteries. I mean, Tesla's basically, I look at Tesla as a battery company wrapped around a car. I mean, that's really, the battery technology is what it really is. Mm-hmm. But the batteries that we use are a company called Enphase is one of them. Savant is another one, and Franklin is another one. So not that I don't like Teslas, but these other batteries have in all honesty, have better warranties. Because Tesla's, I think, a 10-year warranty. These are usually like 15. Okay. But the one that we use the most,
power and everything.
Yeah, because the one we use the most is Enphase, and that's because the microinverters we use for the panels are Enphase, and so it keeps it in the same ecosystem. And Enphase is a fantastic company as far as customer service and things like that. So we've been very, very comfortable using them. And again, they have 15-year warranty, and they're just as good as them. But nobody knows them because Tesla, I want the Powerwall. And again, not that it's not good, but it's, there's things out there. Now, if somebody's dead set, I want a Tesla Powerwall, I'm a certified, so I can sell it to them. Okay. But it's just usually I'm doing Enphase.
Yeah. Now, can you add on after the fact another battery? Like, I have one battery and it's slightly underpowered. It'd be nice to have 2 one day, but I didn't want to pay for the money, at the time.
Adding batteries is technically easy, right? Okay. Because it goes into the electrical panel. It doesn't really have anything to do with the solar. Where we run into a little bit of trouble with batteries or multiple batteries is a battery cannot be installed within 3 feet of a fire source. So you think about the side of your house, your air conditioner can't be within 3 feet of that, gas meter, but it also can't be within 3 feet of any windows and doors, right? So you got to think about if you want to put it outside, where do you have the wall space to do it is really part. Usually that's especially a second battery, because even that battery has to be 3 feet apart from the battery that you have now.
Oh, really? Okay. Mine's actually in my garage, so.
Yeah, so you just have to, again, it's the same rules there. You just have to be able to, but inside garage also, do you have a fire warning for yours? Because maybe back then they weren't. So now inside garages are get a little tough because you have to have a fire system. So you have to have like a special fire warning. And if you're parking close to it, you have to install a bollard, one of those metal things,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure the car doesn't hit it. And a lot of times that will actually take a space or not allow you to park in your garage. So
Interesting.
And these batteries are made to be outside, so outside's fine. It's just
Okay.
yeah.
All right, good to know.
So,
okay, let's. I wanted to go back to the tax credit now, because I know when I got mine, they were like, you're going to spend, I think it was like $175 a month, and they said if I put the $7,500 tax credit back into the loan, it'll stay there. If I don't, it then goes up to 200 and whatever bucks. As you see earlier, I said I was paying $200, so I didn't get a tax credit because I'm self-employed. So I was kind of thinking, stupid me, like not even really thinking. I was like, oh, cool, I'll get a $7,500 check. I'm asking my CPA. He's like, dude, it don't work that way.
No, it doesn't work that way. It is technically a tax credit.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a rebate. And so that is a big difference. So it can only, you can like you found out, you can only use it if you have a tax appetite. Right. So like I said, somebody that's retired that has no tax, I'm probably going to look at a lease for them because they have no benefit of that tax credit. But the way that works is pretty simple, that we send out a certificate after we do the install, you hand it to your CPA, and the CPA says, like a regular W-2. Right.
That's the advantage. If you're a W-2 employee, you file that, you don't get that full amount back, do you? Or like, how does that work?
You get 30, you'll get 30% back.
30% back. Okay.
30% of whatever you installed. So the other thing also is batteries. If we have to upgrade your panel, your electrical panel, all of that count. If we have to do roof work underneath where the solar is going to go, that counts. So anything that has to do with the installing the solar, whatever check you write, you get 30% tax credit on that. But then back to, but it does work. Now, are you 1090? Are you a 1099 or?
I'm self-employed. I own my company, so I just
Okay.
I just use that tax credit to offset some of my taxes, but
and you can use it for, I think you can use it up to 5 years.
Okay.
So you don't have to use it. So if you can't use it all in 1 year, you can roll that over. But that's basically how it works. Like I said, in W-2s, you actually do get that money back. In 1099s, it's, your tax guy says you owe $10,000 and you say, well, I got a $9,000 tax credit. Then you only owe $1,000. Or most people end up giving it back to the lender, getting that tax credit and giving it back to the lender to keep their payment, because you're in what's called a combo loan. So which is very popular. It's the loans that I usually sell as well. And it's just that you just have to give that tax credit back. But the nice thing about it is you don't have to. I mean, you can technically, it's just your payment goes up, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I mean, you know how horrible lenders are, right? I mean, they're never nice.
A lot of shitty lenders out there, man. Well, that's the thing. It's like, you only get part of the truth, and it's frustrating because you don't know.
It is.
Yeah, you hear one thing and then it ends up being something slightly different. Like, did they tell the truth? Sure, with holes in it though.
Yeah.
And
it's always,
you got to really do your research, or have somebody like you that is going to be honest and is going to tell them how it works. Like, hey, you're self-employed. They say you're going to get a tax credit, but it doesn't work like that, Yeah,
it doesn't.
So,
but I mean, it's all. I mean, again, we all are business owners here, and it's the same thing that when somebody hears it first. Now I got to not only tell them the truth, but then try and explain to them that you were lied to, and they don't want to, because now they don't want to feel stupid either. Right. So they're going to hold on to that. Well, this is what he told me. I'm like,
yes, I've seen that a lot of times as well. And
of course. I used to see it too when I was in lending. It was the same. Yeah. They hear it, or they hear it on the radio, or my friend got a 3.75. How come I can't get 3? It's a completely different situation. But the one thing I will tell you, yeah, exactly. The one thing I'll tell you is Tim and I are we are very consultative. We always say mission before commission. We'll make sure that it's right, because what I tell people is, maybe solar's not right for you. Maybe it's not. It's like people in Manhattan Beach and on the beach communities, their electric bill isn't big enough. It probably doesn't make any sense, or if you have one person living in a 900 square foot house, their bills, $125 a month, it doesn't make sense. And what I tell people is, I drive around. There are plenty of roofs that don't have solar. So if it's not right for you, that's fine. You know,
Yeah.
so when I get into those discussions with people, this guy told me this, and I'm like, okay, listen, I'm just telling you what I'm telling you, but it's your decision. If you want to do that, that's fine. I'm okay with that. It's like I said, there's plenty of roofs out there that don't have solar. So,
Yeah. No, I like that. Chris, have you ever had any legal issues when it comes to solar, out of curiosity, as an attorney?
I have not, but it became an issue when I sold the house.
Yeah.
And that created a little bit of stress on my part.
If you lease it, did they just have to take over the lease, and then they just have to apply for that? How'd that work?
So after Solar City installed the panels, Tesla at some point acquired them.
Yeah.
So now I was working with Tesla on the Solar City contract, which was like a 20-year contract, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's very similar, or very.
And so basically, what I had to do was the buyer stepped in and took over, and they were actually excited about having the solar.
Yeah,
because Santa Clarita, your electric bill in the summers, you're $800,000 a month.
Yeah,
because the AC never turns off.
Correct.
And so it was, they saw it as a big benefit to have, solar panels on the house. And, I had explained to them how the contract functioned, that you're still going to get a bill. And the way Edison was doing it at the time is you had to pay some regulatory fees every month, but it was like $2 or $3. That'd be your bill. And then at the end of the year, they would do some kind of reconciliation, balancing between the power you put on the grid, the power that you pulled off the grid. And so you'd get one bill at the end of the year, and it'd be several $100. But then when you looked at, like the net spend, it was completely worth it.
So you have like 1 minute left, David. So my last question was, as a lender, I've refinanced a lot of houses with solar on it. They file what is a UCC filing?
UCC1, yeah.
UCC1. If as an owner of solar, is that still filed or not? Because I'm not sure. It is.
Yeah. If you are financing, it is.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So I'd still have to kind of get that removed or temporary.
Yeah, but nowadays, I mean, after the refi boom during COVID, because we ran into it too, because I was a lender back then. Solar companies and solar finance companies it's easy to subordinate them now.
Yeah, so, it's like a $350 fee or something like that.
Usually something like that.
The one there was, I forget the name of the company. It was actually, they were super easy and free. But whatever.
Yeah, nowadays they're really easy to subordinate and get that refi done. And the last thing I'll say is a lot of people think it's a lien on the house. It's not. It's a lien on the equipment, right? Yeah. It just tells everybody that you don't technically own that equipment. Mm-hmm. They do. So
as if I have a loan on it, but I own it, there's still a lien because it's a loan. So
correct.
Okay, correct. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, cool. So awesome, man.
All right. Well, this was awesome. This was great.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate your time. You coming on. Like, you answered a lot of my questions. And where can people, do you have an Instagram or anything? People want to follow you? And
I don't have Instagram because I'm old, and I guess. But I'm on Facebook. I mean, you can shoot me a friend request. I'm on Facebook, and my Facebook I do a little bit of both, kind of personal and business, because I think that's what people want to see. So
yeah.
But then our website is solarverse.com. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. And what's your Facebook? Is it just David?
Yeah, it's just David Cantrell. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool, man. Awesome.
All right. I appreciate it, guys.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care, guys. Bye.